My mom spent my surgery money on my sister's $135,000 wedding and said, "You'll manage." So I did. I managed for 11 years. Then she called crying about my sister's surgery, and I used her exact words. The bank statements arrived on a Tuesday in a manila envelope so ordinary I almost let it sit on my desk until after lunch. 8 pages, laser printed. The account history of a UTMA, a Uniform Transfers to Minors Act custodial account, opened in my name in 1998 at a credit union in Gloucester County, New Jersey, by a woman named Edna Marsh, who sat me on her kitchen floor with a leather ledger and a pencil with no eraser and taught me that numbers don't lie. People do. I had requested these statements through a certified demand letter 5 weeks earlier. As the named beneficiary who had passed the age of majority, armed with the original account agreement my grandmother had filed in a cedar box with a brass latch in her attic, which I had retrieved 3 weeks before her estate sale, which I had attended alone because my mother was busy helping my sister Brooke pick out rehabilitation centers, and my father was, as he had been for most of my adult life, in the direction of the garage. I poured my coffee, sat down, put on my reading glasses. The account had held $82,416 on the day I called my mother and told her my surgeon said I needed a spinal fusion or I was looking at permanent nerve damage to my left leg. I looked at that number for a long moment. $82,000. There, waiting. The day I asked. Then I turned to page 3 and started reading the withdrawal history, and I did what I have done for 17 years as a forensic accountant. I followed the numbers. I followed them all the way to the peonies. My name is Wendy Marsh. I'm 36 years old. I find the number that doesn't balance. I find the entry someone hoped no one would read, buried in line 47 of a 60-line ledger, sitting quietly between 2 legitimate transactions, waiting for someone with the patience to look. When a hospital billing department can't account for $800,000 in processing fees over 4 years, they call me. When an office manager has been writing checks to a shell company for a decade, I find the pattern. When a nonprofit's books look clean at a distance and wrong up close, I am the up close. I built this practice from a home office with secondhand furniture and a Dell laptop that took 4 minutes to open Excel. I now have 6 employees, a suite on the 4th floor of a building in Cherry Hill, and a waiting list. I built it in a back brace. Then I built it with a surgical scar. Then I built it with the specific focus of someone who understands that the alternative to building is simply not building, and that is not something she is willing to accept. My grandmother taught me how to look at numbers. Edna Marsh was 71 when I was born and had been keeping her own books since before keeping your own books was something women were assumed capable of. She'd run the household finances for 43 years with a leather ledger and a mechanical pencil. No eraser, because she considered errors in arithmetic a form of carelessness rather than inevitability, and carelessness was a habit she declined to accommodate. When I was 9, she pulled me onto the kitchen floor beside her, not at the table, the floor. She said the floor kept you honest because you couldn't pretend to be comfortable. She showed me the ledger. Column A, income. Column B, expense. Column C, balance. She showed me how to reconcile, how to find the entry that was off by 11 cents and understand that 11 cents unaddressed became a habit, and a habit became a system, and a system eventually became a number large enough to matter. Numbers don't lie, Wendy. People do. Numbers just sit there until someone's willing to read them. She opened the UTMA account when I was 12. She explained it to me with the same clarity she explained the ledger. Uniform Transfers to Minors Act. Custodial account, irrevocable, in my name. My parents would manage it until I turned 21. Then it was mine, legally and completely, no further action required. This is for your future, she said, not for anything else, just yours. She died when I was 19. A stroke, quick, which she would have approved of because she did not believe in prolonged anything. She left behind the cedar box, the leather ledger, 43 years of household accounts, and an account in my name that she had been depositing into for 7 years. Birthday money, dividend checks, holiday transfers. The careful accumulation of a woman who understood that love expressed in numbers was love that could be counted. Final balance per the ledger, $67,400. I was 19, I was in college, I thought the money was safe. I thought a lot of things that turned out to be wrong about the people managing it. I was 25 when the pickup ran the red light on Route 3. I was driving a 2009 Toyota Camry, northbound green light, 4:47 p.m. on a Thursday in October. The impact was from the passenger side, a full-speed intersection collision, and what it did to my spine was compress 2 vertebrae and rupture the disc between them in a way that the ER radiologist described, with the careful language of someone telling you something bad, as significant and requiring urgent follow-up. The follow-up came 3 days later, in the office of a spinal surgeon named Dr. Paul Akindeel, 15 years of practice, fellowship trained, the kind of doctor who explains things in plain language because he has found that patients who understand their situation make better decisions than patients who don't. He showed me the MRI, the compression, the rupture, the nerve pathway being affected. You need a fusion, he said. L4, L5. We're looking at sooner rather than later. If we wait past roughly 6 months, you're risking permanent nerve damage to the lower left extremity. Numbness, weakness, possibly chronic pain that becomes unmanageable. I asked about cost. He gave me the range. North of $40,000 out of pocket with my insurance coverage at the time. Possibly closer to $48,000 depending on surgical duration and post-op care. I had had $4,300 in savings, but Nana's account had the money. All my parents had to do was sign the release. I hadn't turned 21 yet. I was 3 months shy. The account was still under their management. One signature, one phone call to the credit union, and $40,000 could move from a custodial account to a surgical facility. I called my mother from the parking garage outside Dr. Ackendiel's office. "Honey," she said, and her voice had the quality it gets when she already knows what she's going to say and is choosing the entrance point. "That account? There's barely anything left. The parking garage was cold. Cars were passing behind me." "What do you mean, barely anything?" "Your schooling, some fees, there were adjustments." "Mom, Nana left $67,000 in that account." She showed me the ledger. "What adjustments?" She changed the subject to my sister's new curtains. "Sage green," she said, "for the living room." I stood in the parking garage with my back radiating and my left foot beginning to do the thing. The intermittent numbness that Dr. Akendale had warned me would get worse, and I listened to my mother describe curtains. I told myself she was processing, that she'd look into it, that there was a reasonable explanation for the word adjustments that didn't mean what I was afraid it meant. I called back the following week, still looking into it. The week after. "The bank is being difficult." The week after that, she didn't pick up. By then, my left foot was going numb for hours at a time, and I had started sleeping in a recliner because lying flat made the pain worse, and I was wearing a back brace to work and telling my colleagues it was a minor injury that was being managed, and I had begun to understand, with the slow, terrible clarity of someone who doesn't want to arrive at a conclusion, that the account was not going to be made available to me. That same week, the week my mother stopped answering, my sister Brooke got engaged. Daniel Ferraro, commercial real estate, good-looking in the way of men who know they are. He proposed at a restaurant in the city with a ring my mother later described as, finally, something real. My mother's attention, which had always operated like a spotlight with a limited arc, completed its pivot. Peonies flown in from Holland, a chandelier rented from a specialty event company in North Carolina, 180 guests, a 6-course dinner by a caterer who worked exclusively from a private client list and had a 12-week booking minimum, a custom gown from a bridal atelier in Philadelphia, $135,000. I know the number because my mother said it the way people say things they're proud of, not quietly, not with any awareness of what was sitting 8 miles away, sleeping in a recliner with a back brace and a surgeon's timeline clicking down. I drove to her house on a Sunday. She was at the dining room table with a 3-ring binder, color-coded tabs, ivory for linens, sage for florals. Sage, I noticed, the same color as Brooke's new curtains, which I had been told about in lieu of information about my medical situation. I sat down across from her. "Mom, Dr. Akindle says if I wait past June, I could lose permanent function in my leg. I need to access Nana's account. I need you to sign the release." She was looking at the binder, the florals tab, a photograph of a centerpiece arrangement. "Brooke needs it more right now." I looked at her. She turned to the next tab. My father appeared in the doorway between the dining room and the kitchen. He looked at me. He looked at the floor. He walked back toward the garage. "You're young," my mother said. She turned another page. "You'll manage." She was right, in the worst possible way. I managed. I managed by doing the thing I have always done. I assessed the situation, identified what was within my control, and I worked. I applied for a medical payment plan with the hospital. 18 months, 0% interest, the kind that requires a credit check I almost didn't pass. I picked up consulting hours on weekends for a firm that needed someone who could read financial statements and didn't ask for much beyond accuracy. I moved to a smaller apartment, 1 bedroom, 3rd floor walk-up, because the rent differential was $340 a month, and $340 a month across 18 months was a number I could work with. I slept in the recliner for 14 more months. I wore the back brace. My left foot went numb for stretches of 4 and 6 and once 9 hours, and I would sit at my desk and work through it because the alternative was not working, and not working was not available. I had the surgery at 27. Dr. Akendale performed it. It went well. Textbook, he said, in the way surgeons say things they are pleased with. The recovery took 8 weeks of modified activity and 2 years of physical therapy. The hospital bill was $44,200. I paid it off in 5 years. I never touched the UTMA account again. Never asked about it. Never mentioned Nana's ledger. I built my practice. I learned to find the numbers people hoped no one would read. I got very, very good at it, and I waited. Not consciously, not with a plan, or not a plan I would have named out loud, but somewhere underneath the work, underneath the billing audits and the embezzlement patterns and the Excel models that reconstructed 11 years of skimmed revenue, something was waiting with the patience of a number that knows it's right. 11 years after I sat in that dining room and was told to manage, my mother called me on a Wednesday morning. She was crying in the way she cried when she wanted something, which was different from the way she cried when she was actually devastated, though I had spent long enough studying both to know the difference. "Wendy, it's Brooke." I waited. "Daniel left. 6 months ago. There were debts. Business debts," he said, "but they were personal too, and the accounts were joint, and Brooke didn't know. She had no idea, and now she's..." "What does Brooke need, Mom?" "She needs surgery. Her cervical spine. She's been having symptoms for a year, and she finally saw a doctor, and he says it can't wait. It has to be done within the next few months or the nerve damage could be..." My coffee was hot. I held the cup in both hands and let my mother's voice move through the phone. "I need you to help her, Wendy. Please. You've built something. Your practice is doing well. You could..." I said, "I'll look into what I can do." That was the truth, just not in the direction my mother imagined. 3 weeks later, on a Saturday morning, I drove to Nana's house. The estate sale was the following weekend. My cousin Darla was handling it. She'd been managing the property since our aunt, the last person living there, had moved to assisted living in February. Darla had texted to ask if I wanted anything before the sale opened to the public. Quick pause. If you want more stories like this in better quality, my Spotify's linked in the description. I wanted one thing. The attic smelled the way old houses smell when they've been closed up in summer. Warm and still, insulation and old wood, and decades of accumulated quiet. I found the cedar box on the second shelf of a freestanding rack, behind 2 shoeboxes and a rolled-up calendar from 1987. Brass latch. Clicked twice, the way it always had. The leather ledger was inside. Smaller than I remembered, the way things from childhood always are. The dimensions revised by time. I sat on the attic floor with it in my lap and opened to the first page. 7 years of entries. Edna Marsh's handwriting, the same steady, eraserless hand that had taught me column A and column B, and how a balance becomes a balance. Birthday transfer, $400. Dividend check, $215. Holiday deposit, $500. Year after year after year, the columns building, the balance growing, the evidence of a woman who loved her granddaughter in the most durable language she knew. Final balance, written at the bottom of the last page in ink that was slightly darker than the rest, like she'd pressed harder, $67,400. And below that, underlined once for Wendy, numbers don't lie. I closed the ledger, put it back in the cedar box, took the box downstairs. Then I drove to my office and sent the certified demand letter. Raymond Choi had been handling financial recovery cases for 21 years when I called his firm. He specialized in breach of fiduciary duty claims, specifically custodial account misappropriation, a category of case he described on our first call as more common than people think and more recoverable than people expect, particularly when the documentation is solid. The documentation, I told him, was solid. He had the original UTMA agreement by end of day, the ledger, certified copies of my grandmother's death certificate and the account establishment records, the demand letter to the credit union. The statements arrived 5 weeks later. I had driven Raymond through my methodology before they arrived, the way a forensic accountant walks a client through what the evidence is going to show before it shows it, so there are no surprises when the numbers materialize. He had listened carefully and then said, "Wendy, I want to be honest with you. Even knowing what you've told me, seeing the actual statements is going to be hard." He was right. The account had held $82,306 on the day I called my mother from Dr. Akendeal's parking garage. $82,000, sitting there, the day I asked. I turned to page 3. The withdrawals started in March, the month Brooke got engaged. March 14th, $4,200. March 28th, $6,800. April 11th, $8,500. I pulled up the wedding invoice my mother had sent to a family group email with the subject line Brooke's Big Day, vendor summary, sent in the proud public way of someone who wants the number witnessed. The barn venue deposit, $8,500. Paid April 11th, I went line by line. The florist, peonies from Holland, the specific line item, matched a withdrawal of $11,200 on May 3rd. The chandelier rental from the North Carolina company, $6,400. Withdrawal dated May 19th, $6,400. The caterer's deposit, $14,000. Withdrawal, June 2nd, $14,000. The bridal atelier in Philadelphia, $9,800. Withdrawal, July 15th, $9,800. I matched every payee on the vendor summary to a withdrawal on the bank statements. Every date aligned, every dollar. The final withdrawal, the one that took the account from $4,116 to $0, was dated September 3rd. Brooke's wedding was September 7th. My surgery money paid for the peonies. My surgery money paid for the chandelier. My surgery money paid for the 6-course dinner and the custom gown and the 180 guests and the silver-framed photograph that still hung on my mother's dining room wall, visible from the chair where she had told me I was young and would manage. I annotated all 8 pages in red, every matching entry, every date. 8 pages that told a story as clearly as any ledger Edna Marsh had ever kept. Numbers don't lie. They just wait for someone willing to read them. Raymond Choi, on a Friday afternoon. Wendy, the breach of fiduciary duty case is strong. Stronger than most I've seen. The UTMA protections are explicit. Custodial funds cannot be used for the benefit of persons other than the named beneficiary. Using the account to fund your sister's wedding is textbook misappropriation. What's the exposure? Principal recovery. $82,116 minus whatever legitimate education expenses were documented. And from what I've reviewed, there was no documentation, no receipts, nothing that would qualify under UTMA educational exceptions. Plus, 11 years of lost investment growth, which our financial expert can calculate. Plus, potentially punitive damages, given the deliberateness of the timing. A pause. The total recovery estimate, conservatively, is in the range of $130,000 to $145,000. I was quiet for a moment. $135,000, I said. Around there, yes. The same number my mother had said like scripture. I told Raymond to file. The family dinner was my mother's idea. She called on a Sunday with the particular warmth she deployed when she had a plan. Everyone's coming. I want us all together. 14 people. She used the phrase working things out. She mentioned that Brooke wasn't doing well. She mentioned that Aunt Carol was concerned. She said said she thought talking as a family would be helpful. She had built the room to generate pressure. A full table, sympathetic faces, Brooke in a soft neck brace, the wedding photo on the wall. She had built me a stage. I arrived with the cedar box. The table was exactly as she'd arranged it. The good china, the extended leaves, the particular configuration of people who had been briefed on their role. Brooke at the end nearest my mother, the neck brace drawing appropriate attention. Aunt Carol in her usual seat with her usual expression of prepared grievance. My father near the kitchen door looking at the centerpiece. I set the cedar box on the table. No preamble, no greeting beyond the minimal. I opened the box, the ledger, the original UTMA agreement, 17 pages, my grandmother's signature on the last page in her precise hand, 8 pages of bank statements, annotated in red. The wedding vendor summary printed from the group email my mother had sent with the subject line, Brooke's Big Day, matched to the statements with colored arrows I had added in case the alignment wasn't immediately clear to people less accustomed to reading financial documents. I laid them in sequence on the table, ledger, agreement, statements, vendor summary. 14 people looked at the table. I did not look at their faces yet. I looked at the documents and spoke the way I speak when I'm presenting findings, precisely, without editorializing. My grandmother opened this account in 1998, UTMA irrevocable in my name. She deposited into it for 7 years. The ledger shows every entry. Final balance at her death, $67,400. I moved to the statements. The account held $82,116 the day I called my mother and told her I needed spinal surgery or I was risking permanent nerve damage. I placed my finger on the date. She told me there was barely anything left. Aunt Carol's prepared expression had changed into something unscripted. The withdrawals began in March, the month Brooke got engaged. I walked them through it, every line, every matching vendor, the barn venue, the florist, the chandelier, the caterer, the gown. I did not rush it. I gave each item the weight of a line in a ledger read aloud. The final withdrawal was September 3rd. Brooke's wedding was September 7th. I set the vendor summary beside the statements. Every dollar is documented. Every date matches. My mother stood up. Her voice had gone the way it went when she was choosing between 2 registers and landed on the wrong one. How dare you bring this here? This is a family dinner. This is not. I've retained Raymond Choi, I said. He's been in fiduciary breach practice for 21 years. The demand letter was sent Friday. Breach of fiduciary duty under UTMA. The estimated recovery, including 11 years of lost growth, is approximately $135,000. The room went the way rooms go when a number lands that everyone present can do the arithmetic on. The same number. Her number. The number she had said like scripture. She understood. I watched her understand. It moved across her face the way understanding moves when it is unwelcome. Slowly, then all at once. She looked at the photo on the wall. The wedding photo in the silver frame. The peonies from Holland visible in the background. Blush pink against the barn's white painted boards. My father had not said anything since I sat down. He was looking at the tablecloth. Brooke had not said anything either. She was looking at the statements. She was doing the math too. I could see it. The particular expression of someone reading a document they did not know existed and adjusting their understanding of their own history accordingly. Aunt Carol's hands were flat on the table. My mother turned to me. She played the only card left. She played it in the same cadence she'd used on the phone 3 weeks ago. The same words, the same tone. Your sister needs surgery now. Please help. 14 people at the table. Good china. The wedding photo glittering on the wall. I looked at my mother across the ledger and the statements and the 8 annotated pages of a number that had waited 11 years to balance. I said, she'll manage. Raymond filed the formal complaint in October. The credit union's legal team, presented with the UTMA documentation and the annotated statements, settled within 60 days rather than proceed to discovery. The settlement, $130,400, structured as full principal recovery plus calculated growth, less a small reduction Raymond had anticipated and we had priced in. The silver-framed wedding photo is still on my mother's wall, as far as I know. I haven't been back to the house. My mother and I have not spoken since October. She sent 2 emails, both of which Raymond's office handled. My father called once, in November. He didn't say much. He said he was sorry. I told him I heard him. I'm not sure what to do with it yet, and I have decided that not knowing what to do with it yet is an acceptable place to be. Brooke's surgery was covered by a combination of her own insurance, which it turned out was better than she'd initially believed, and a payment plan the hospital arranged when she applied. She is recovering. I know this because my cousin Darla told me, not because my mother told me. I did not contribute to the surgery costs. That is not a decision I made with coldness. I made it with the same methodology I apply to everything. I assessed the situation, identified what was true, and acted accordingly. The truth was that the money for my own surgery had been there, available, and had been spent on someone else while I slept in a recliner for 14 months. The truth was that I had managed. The truth was that she'll manage was not a cruelty. It was a fact, stated plainly, to a woman who had stated it to me 11 years earlier and been right. Brooke managed. Numbers, as Edna Marsh would tell you, don't forgive. They just wait for someone willing to read them. And I have always been willing to read them. The cedar box is on the shelf behind my desk. The ledger is inside. I took it out once since the settlement, on a Sunday evening in December when the office was empty and the building was quiet. I opened it to the last page and read the final entry again. 7 years of deposits, the balance accumulating in Edna Marsh's steady, eraserless hand. For Wendy, numbers don't lie. I closed it, put it back in the box, clicked the brass latch twice. Nana was right, as she was right about most things. The numbers didn't lie. They just needed someone to finally read them out loud.